Thank you for having me. I met some of you in the class I taught around aligning data strategy with business strategy, which I think is critical when you're thinking about your data strategy. But even when you go elementary, before when you think about data strategy, really the topic, the high value really comes from and why that is really important. But before I get started, let me tell you a little bit about my background. As Fern said, I've been in the industry for now 25 years. I started as a computer science engineer, progressed being a product manager, engagement manager, and then really building the companies around data management, data analytics, and big data world. So I get to see a lot of different companies and see how they are working and what's working and what's not working. A lot of times I see that no matter which company I go in, the problems remain the same. It's really the same questions people are asking. So why framework for high value big data? Why that topic has become suddenly so much more important, even though we've been working with data for 25 years. We've been working for data forever. And I hear more about value now than ever before. When I was growing up in the industry, we were working with relational databases, optimizing databases. All our focus was really on, let's get the data into the data warehouse. Let's make sure we have the reports we can look at, and really thinking about how can we generate the reports and get the reports right. The value was never the highlight. Now, we are entering the world of big data. Big data became a big buzzword because everybody was talking about big data. And people know that, there are about 5 V's, some say 3 V's, some say 5 V's, but let's talk about the V's in big data. They say, we've got the volume. I'm a publisher, I'm a writer, and I would publish something on LinkedIn, and I'll start getting calls from these C-level executives, and they would say to me, we've got the volume, we've got the data, now what? They said, we are bringing the data in high velocity. We're getting all kinds of variety of data. We have unstructured data, we have structured data. We've got the data with all kind of information, the social data. I really want to now focus on, can I really trust the data? And that's really the important V when people are not trusting the data. But the biggest one is the value. I want to be able to generate value out of the data which I'm collecting. So I recently got on a board of a consumer product goods company only because the chairman wanted somebody who was expert in data. And he gets on the call with me and he says, should I just hire data scientists? Will it solve my problem? Should I hire the best technology? And the problem is the technology and the tools can't solve the problem, as you all know. So we get into this world where they think that they've got the big data and they can make a lot of money, they can monetize that data, and they're focusing on really creating the value. Let's just create the value. Who do they go to? They go to the IT people. They just come to you without any problem, without any real business case. They come to you and they say, you got the data, you're the tech people, solve my problem. They don't understand that really to solve a business, to solve and give you the value for the data, you need to really have the framework. And that's really what happened was, traditionally the CIOs were chartered for what? CIOs were chartered for cutting cost. IT was a cost center. Now we are getting into this world, which is actually fortunate for the IT leaders, because we are getting in this world where we can actually take the data, convert our cost centers into a value center. And we have the power of converting that into a value center like never before. So what are we doing with all the resources we've got? Can we actually create that change? And the CDO is now, and a lot of companies are getting hired. The chief data officer's charter is, how can you take the data and convert that into something more meaningful? So as Fern said, I'm a faculty at Columbia University. And the perks of being a faculty, a professor at a university is that you get research funding. So they came to me and they said, you can hire, we are giving you a research assistant, what would be your topic, and what topic would I pick? All these calls I'm getting every day where they're saying, what is the value of the data? I'm like, you know what? We heard a lot of really great answers today among all the tables. All of that is important before you get the value. So there are X number of elements which we need to identify before you can actually get to the value of the data you've got, because there is a lot of data and there is a lot of uncertainty in that data. So as I started my journey on the research, what I really was looking for is creating a framework, an easy framework which IT leaders could take and start communicating in a simple manner. The goal is we all, being in IT, we understand what our challenges are. My goal was to provide you this framework which you can take to a business community or your internal technical teams and talk about how easily they can understand where we stand. So if you don't see the value instantly, if you can't have an ROI immediately on the data you've collected, how can you communicate that with your team? So what I saw that there are 7 elements. 1 core, 2 pillars, and 4 foundational elements to a high value big data projects. The core is definitely the value. You need to see the value. We talk about the high value. You need to start with the value first. We talk about the big data. You could really start with any data element. So start small. I heard somebody say, can we create small wins? And really you want to start with creating small wins. So high value is really the core. The 2 pillars which we found is really the organizational maturity. Is your organization mature enough to consume that data and create the value? So is your organization mature enough internally? And do you have internal competencies? Do you have the competencies to be able to produce? So when you start talking about value, the first thing we need to have the conversation about is what is the organizational maturity and what is your internal competencies. The 4 foundational elements, which during the discussion is important, is to understand, do we know what the objective is? How clear your objective is? Do we understand what the data governance looks like within our organization? We might not have a formal initiative around data governance, but do we have anything at all around that? Do we have the engagement? It was nicely said earlier that business and IT is communicating. Are they engaged in the process? And the last is transformation. Can now that data create the transformation to give you the high value? And so when you have this discussion with the C-level executives, the question is, do you have the framework? And where do you land on that framework? It's okay to know that you might not be ready, right? So when you talk about high value, immediately people are talking about, how do you monetize your data? Can I improve efficiency? Can I launch new products? One of my great stories, a case study which I teach, is about Netflix. I love that story because they are a true transformational company which use data in the right way to take the lead. And they've been taking a lead for a few years now. They've done a great job in really focusing on what customer needs are. One of the quizzes I give is that, what would be a KPI? During the time when they were mailing the DVDs, if you guys remember, to now today when they're streaming the data, they have the video on demand, what was the metrics they were tracking at that time? Is it the revenue? Is it number of subscribers? It's number of high quality movies or content they have? What were they tracking? The true answer is they were tracking none of the above. What they were tracking was my customer interest, how long my customer is staying on the video, how long my customer is staying on a content which I'm distributing to my consumer. So the fact is, are you measuring the right thing? If you are not measuring the right thing, if you don't understand what your customer needs are, it would be hard for you to collect the data and create that transformation. It would be hard for you to launch new products or launch new markets or do merger and acquisition in the right field and reduce risk, right? So when you talk about high value, what is high value for your organization? Is there a clear objective and understanding? So Netflix, they now landed up creating their own content. If you ask them 10 years back that you're going to launch their own content, people would laugh. They're a video distribution company. They will never be in content delivery. Nobody probably worried. None of the competitors today worried about Netflix being in their space. They could change. They could create that shift because they understood what the customer needed. They didn't worry about their P&L at that time. They didn't worry about what the monthly revenue was coming in. They cared about their customer and they really understood their customer, what their customer needs were. So the focus on the right thing. Are we measuring the right thing? And you can, go and learn about how to create the best dashboards and how to do a storytelling. But if you're not telling the right story, you will not be able to create the shift and the value, the high value you're looking for. So let's look at a few other examples. If we had to randomly pick a few other examples, who are the data-driven companies? Say it again. Amazon. Just randomly, what comes up that they're truly a data-driven company? They're not traditional companies. They're really using data to create new value. Yes? Google, yeah. Uber. I love Uber example because they came from rideshare to Uber Eats. They started saying, what do my customer needs? So all these companies you're talking about, so I have Amazon, I have Facebook, Waze. Waze came in and they said, what do my customer need? I'm just going to share the information first. And then they started understanding the behavior, where they're going. Uber Eats came out and they said, let me see where they stop. Maybe they can, I can offer new services. So how are these companies? JP Morgan Chase, I don't know if you heard, last year JP Morgan Chase spent $10 billion in tech. $10 billion in technology. So we are clearly in the world where technology investment in AI and machine learning is really going to be coming out. So you're in the right place in investing in your careers and your future to make sure you can make that impact, right? So this morning, the news came out that President Trump signed an order to invest in AI. I don't know if you guys learned. It's going to be coming more and more. There are going to be more and more investments in emerging technologies. Your C-level executives are going to come in and say, what are we doing with machine learning and deep learning? How are we going to get there? But the basic is, can we understand? So these are some of the other examples. But what you want to understand is your organization ready? Is your organization ready to really take that jump? So next is the two pillars. Really when somebody says to you, what is the value my data is providing, you have to talk about the framework. You have to say, is my organization ready? What is organization maturity about? Organization maturity is about if they have a strategy. Do they have the data standardized? Do they have the data quality? Can they integrate? Can they democratize the data? Do they have that infrastructure to be able to hard asset? Organizational maturity is about understanding that they have a strategy they can fall back into, and they have the capability of consolidating, creating the governance, creating the security, creating the quality for the data. And then comes the internal competencies, really important. You can have all the infrastructure, you can have the technology and the security, but if you don't have the right people in the right seats, that would be a problem. So really having the leadership engaged. You want to have your leadership who understand that data is going to be the factor to really make critical decisions. Data is going to be the critical element in every decision we make and the direction we are going in. Engagement is important, but also what is important is adaptability. Can what you're providing to the user community, the business community, how easily and well adaptable they are? I heard somebody earlier talk about we're going to have training, to make sure that our business community is engaged. So really thinking about, is my organization mature enough to understand the value and consume the value? As technology leaders, you can continue building technology, but if your organization is not ready, not mature enough, and not have the right tools to be able to deliver the value, it'll be a struggle for you. If you cannot get your internal competencies right, if you can't get your teams ready, your leadership engaged, your business community engaged, create those groups and networks we were talking about earlier. If you cannot get your the community engaged, it would be hard for you to create the value. So it's okay. I'm a manufacturing company, and I am at a level where I realize that my organization is not mature. I understand that I don't have the right tools, and I understand that I don't have the right data quality. Invest in that. Just understand that you're not ready for focusing on emerging technologies yet. you understand that we might not be ready for high-value data initiatives yet. We need to focus on our foundation. We need to focus on our pillars we are going to create the high-value structure in. So really focusing on and just realizing, I'm not ready and it's okay. But having that honest communication with your leadership is critical. The challenge is that I would go into the clients and I'll see, they talk about data strategy, but when you talk about business strategy, they don't know what the business strategy is. A lot of times people would say, how about just our strategy for our group? You can build a strategy for your own group, but if you're not connected to your whole organization, if you're not connected to the organization goal, it will be a constant challenge. If you don't know where your organization is going, living in a silo and trying to do the best within your group will be very, very hard. Another great example I share is Sloan Kettering. It's a cancer center in New York City, and a friend of mine who's the head of analytics there, he now sits, his group, analytics group, sits in strategy, sits under COO, because they understand the value of the data. They understand that the data is really informing the strategy. So any decision they make sure that they reference to the data before making the decision. One of the great practices that I've learned from them is that the head of analytics will make sure that all of his members will go and sit with the business. They were working on a post-operations efficiencies project, and he had his technical team go sit and watch a surgery and see how long the patient takes after the surgery and what the inefficiencies are. And it was a 3-year-old child who was going through a cancer surgery, and the programmer who was talking to me was saying that I was so moved. We are in healthcare. We don't work as data scientists. We don't work in healthcare for the money. We work in healthcare because we are passionate about the cause. And he said the fact that the lowest team member, from an analyst to a programmer to a manager, every single person in their group sits with the business and sees what the patient goes through. That's their customer. They're understanding what the pain points are. Then they can come back and really start working on the projects passionately. So it's about getting involved with the business. As IT leaders, are we getting our technical people educated about business? Are we getting them engaged with the business to really understand what the problem they're facing? Do they understand what the business strategy is and where the company is going? And who are you serving? Can you really think about having those discussions with your team to figure out who are you serving as a company together, business and IT? A lot of times you are struggling between IT and business. You're having all these constant conflicts. Who owns the data? Who should own the data? This is your responsibility, So we're constantly struggling with the internal differences, but the goal is that we have to build the joint teams to get to the place where we can actually provide the value together. Internal competency is really, really important because it's about engagement. How engaged your community is, your business and IT community is. You talk about value when you start thinking about the value. If your business and IT is not aligned, it'll be a very hard place for you to create the value. It's a constant struggle. People are now becoming more inefficient because they're worried about, I'm not going to talk to business to ask for this. They're just looking at us as order takers, right? So you are stuck in this world where you're struggling constantly to provide value, but you're stuck because of the political reasons. You're saying that the processes are not smooth enough for me to communicate and create engagement. So when we talk about the fourth foundation is, when you talk about organizational maturity, the two important foundations in organizational maturity is objective. Do you have the clarity and alignment? Do you have the clarity and alignment with the business? Do you understand what the goals are? Do you understand the strategy of the organization, objective of as a leader, maybe I understand it. Have I communicated well enough with my team? How well the business understand what your charters are and what your limitations are? Have you communicated the framework and where you stand? So really understanding and having the clarity, so understanding the objective is really, really important. We also found that the data governance, the organizations in our surveys, the data governance piece is important. If it's formal or informal, if you don't know what your data integration, your policies on data collaboration, data distribution is, if you don't have the definitions right, if you don't have the lineage or quality defined, it is a challenge for organizations to really start monetizing on the data they've collected. So really having the objective, having a clear objective, and having the clear governance strategy is critical for understanding, can you provide the value? So under objective, when we talk about the goals and we talk about what the strategic alignment is, the biggest three elements we found is the financial impact. Can we say that when we are looking at the data, any projects you're working on, any data, high value data, big data project you're working on, or even if it's any data project, are you monitoring? Are you starting with an objective? Do you start your project by saying, what is the financial impact for the data which I'm working with? Do you have the strategic alignment? Are you asking these questions before you start a project? Are you saying that, what is my financial impact? Are we aligned with the bigger goal? Is that clearly defined? Does your team understand that? And what are you creating operational efficiencies? So even before you start a project, can you clearly define success? Can the success be aligned to what the objectives are of the organization? Another great example is, and I was thinking about, as I was thinking about this presentation, who are the companies I personally admire? And Geisinger is one of them. Geisinger Health is an organization which actually went out and said, this is on their website. Their brand promise is that we're going to take advantage of the rise of big data. We're going to use the genomics sequencing, and we're going to we will prevent people from becoming sick. Their efforts are going in helping people becoming healthier. That's what their charter is. Their brand promise is that we will refund you your money if you're not satisfied. For a healthcare organization to have that kind of a brand promise is remarkable. And the reason they can do that is because they understand their data. They understand their consumers. They understand the procedures they're providing. They understand them, so they study their data. They're very advanced in how they're looking at their healthcare data and how they're serving their community. So the result is that the people who are in this room can actually have an impact. The people in this room can actually move their organization from cost centers to a revenue, high-value centers. And how you do is really understanding the data you've got at hand, but you need to have the elements. And if you cannot get to that level, what is the roadmap? Using a framework which will guide you. It's a guiding principle to really get you to that place. So the biggest challenge what I've seen in my career is that IT sits in their silo and this is my role and my job is to make sure that I give you this. I consolidate the data, and the business is focusing on business. I need to make money, I need to produce revenue, I need to do the sales, and they're focusing on what they are responsible for. We are living in this world that technologists need to learn about business, and business needs to learn about technology. The gap has to reduce, and it will reduce. The question is, where do you stand on that path? How are you taking that journey of becoming more business savvy and helping your peers who are business leaders to become tech savvy? When I get calls from business leaders, the C-level executives who are calling me and saying, can I just hire smart people and they'll give me value? They don't understand. They're not understanding what the technology is providing them. And so it becomes your responsibility to educate your business peers. Educate them on what the framework looks like and what is necessary to get there. What is the problem they're trying to solve? And truly understand what the problem they're looking to solve before you can actually provide the value. The next element is the data governance. Data governance is all about making sure that the integration is there, quality is there, accessibility is there. How you're delivering your data. Are you making self-service analytics or are you producing analytics for them? How are you empowering your users to consume the data and the security? Security is a huge element. In every aspect of our data now, we have to work on security. So what kind of security plans do you have and how you're implementing security? So you can start with traditional. It's okay to start with traditional data warehousing practices, whatever practice you have. You can parallelly have a data lake. You can parallelly have an environment where you're actually dumping the data, the social media data, the open, unstructured data into an environment. But the goal is, can you actually make it accessible? How easy is that data to be accessible for your consumers? And do you have some kind of standards? Whatever standards that is, and is it published? Data privacy is critical, right? So we live in the world, and number one thing which we constantly still face is the trustworthy data. Can they actually trust the data which you're producing? Can they actually use that data which you're producing? And can they say, now I can use my gut? You know, I do a lot of work in healthcare, and I would, every time I'm working with the physicians, physicians strongly believe that they know what they're doing. And they know what they're doing really well because they come from the experience. And so it's a huge challenge to get physicians to adopt technology because they believe that they know what they're doing. But if you start showing them the data, if you start showing them small wins to change their behavior, change management is going to be a critical aspect of this. How do you really create the change management and change the behavior of these leaders to make sure that they can start trusting the data you're providing? And then comes the internal competencies. The internal competency is, engagement is the key. Data literacy is the key. You can build the best gadget. You can write the best machine learning algorithm. You can build the best tool. But if they're not using it, there is no use of building a technology which has no use. Right? So you have to make sure that whatever you build, you can actually educate your consumer internally or externally. I had somebody yesterday I was talking to, and they said, how about we create that for our investors? That's a great idea. If you can create it for the consumer, external consumers, right? If you can create for the external consumer, more power to you. So the fact is, how are you educating not only your internal and external users and training them and making it something which is easy for them to use? You're creating this access for them. You are the enabler. You are the data owners who can actually create this access for them and train them to use their data and less work for you. So you're not just the order taker and creating reports. So data literacy is really critical. Executive commitment is huge. You want your senior executives in it, all in, to be able to make that happen. Another great example I talk about is Flatiron Health. Anybody has heard Flatiron Health? And what a great story Flatiron Health is. They're an organization which was started by a 27-year-old gentleman, Nat Turner. And Google funded it. Google Ventures funded it initially. Their whole charter was, we're going to remove cancer. That's what they started with, a big task at hand. All they do is that collect the data from all the healthcare organizations on cancer data. And they actually, so when I walked into their offices, and I said to them, oh, where is your healthcare staff? And they're like, oh, IT and healthcare sits on the same table. So it was an open room, it's like a Google-style office, open room where their nurses and their tech team actually sit on one table. They had just have opposite side, and they're engaged completely in really looking at the data together and providing the solution. They got acquired last year for $2 billion. A few years back, started the company. $2 billion, they sold it to Roche Pharmaceutical. And the reason they could do that because they understood, the C-level executive understood the value of data. They understood that if they collected the data, they used a framework to make sure it's integrated, it's clean, and they're mature enough to have that level of engagement to create the transformation. Right? So it is happening. It's clearly happening in the world where data-driven companies are actually creating the value. They are creating the value. The question is, how are you going to create the value within your organization? And can you start small? The other really important one which I see in data usage, how much is your data getting used? You created this availability of data. Is the user, if it is a self-service, how much is this data getting used? Start tracking it. And then when you get to the transformation, is it adaptable? Is it easy to use? Building something which is super complicated, Amazon one-click solution became huge. Amazon was a turning point when they created the one-click. The reason was because it was so easy to use. what you're building for your consumer, how simple and easy it is to use for them. How easy it is for them to access, use, and scale. Can you actually scale that? And the last part here is repeatability. How easy it is to repeat that. Can you actually create what you're making it available for them? Can they continuously use it and repeat it? For your internal users, maybe they can use that set of data and continuously use that or improve that and share it. Another organization I work with, they do hackathons, internal hackathons. So if you're building a machine learning model, you make it available. They have the GitHub licenses and they make it available, so there's a collaboration. We spoke about collaboration. Collaboration can be at multiple levels. So how are you engaging? We were talking about how you retain high-skilled employees. You're living in a world where people are working not just for money, but they're also working for purpose. They want to know that they're adding value. So that has become a huge thing with millennials. They want to add value. So how are you creating that environment for them, which is progressive, which is making them available, think outside the box? Are you creating that environment where they are actually coming to you with ideas? So creating that platform where you can actually help them adapt the technology, repeat the technology, and give you constructive input. So they say engage employees, the happy employees. You keep these employees who are engaged, who are contributing consistently. Having good employees is value to your organization. How can you keep them engaged and train them to look at the data not just as knowledge, but turn that into action? So the story I shared with you, the board I sit on, the chairman and the CEO is passionate about the data, but they're still at the stage where they're just looking at the data as information. There is no action on when they look at the data. So are you looking at, when you're looking at what you're providing to your users, business users, do you have something that leads them to an action? How strongly can you say that what analytics you're providing in your organization has an action item on it, which is very, very critical. You need to take that data from knowledge to action. And I don't see a lot of organizations doing that yet. They talk about predictive models, they talk about working on machine learning, but the data that can actually inform your decisions is very, very rare. So start getting in the habit of thinking about how can I actually start into action, the world of looking at the data and building action. So it's absolutely, number one thing I talk about is ease of use. Number one thing is everything that is developed within your organization, within your analytics organization or data organization, how easy it is to use. Can you audit it before you put it in production? Is it easy to use? Is it scalable? And is it reusable, repeatable? Can you actually have that audit done before you actually make it available to the business user? Make sure that it is not difficult. You don't have to spend a lot of hours in training the people. That's critical. So going back to the 7 elements, again, the first number one element is the high value. We all are looking for high value. Listen, we all come to work not just to build technology, but we want to make sure that the technology we build can be implemented. So high value is the center of it. The next 2 pillars, which is critical in understanding, is your maturity. Self-awareness is good. This is our organizational maturity, and we are ready or we are not ready, which is okay. But understanding what steps we need to take, the right steps we need to take our organization to the next level. How many times we build something which goes on the shelf? That's not our goal. So as long as you understand and your senior management understand, your business community understands, your technology community understands that this is where we are as our organizational maturity is here. We understand objectives might not be clear. Our data governance might not be in place. Having a clear understanding of where my organizational maturity is critical. Just having the self-awareness. Internal competencies. Engagement is important, is super important. Having your IT and business community working together is critical to your success. And what happens is every time you sit with a business user or you're touching a customer, you learn more. Every day you're learning and your team is learning more, the more you enable your teams to really go and talk to the business users. And everything you build has to be, you have to keep in mind, are you transforming or not? Transformation is the critical aspect of building what you build. can you really transform your organization to taking from just looking at data, collecting data? Yeah, you got all the data, you've got the unstructured data, you've got, you're in the big data world now, but how do you really bring the value and transform your organization? So self-awareness is critical, as I said. Know where your current state is. Understand where you are and know where you want to go. And where you want to go is the right place or not. And it will change. So don't get frustrated. I have teams where they'll get frustrated. They'll say, oh, but the client wanted this and now they're going here. And it's okay, because that's the form of cycles we go through. We have to keep, if we were same and we kept doing the same thing, we would fail. So we have to make sure we are evolving, we are flexible enough to evolve with the strategy and the technology and the objective. So understand the future state is in a constant state of change, which is okay. Think about the value map. When you're looking at the projects, can you identify the potential value cases? What are the top value cases in finance or HR or supply chain, whatever that may be? Think about the value cases when you're working with the technology. And then think about, what are my key value indicators? I got my 4 value cases, and what I've done in the past is, when I'm working with clients, I do those 2-day workshops where they're not sitting in their room doing their work, they're outside the work environment, and they're thinking about what my value cases would look like. Where can I actually create the quick wins? So think about the prioritization, and it can never be done if you're sitting on your desk. You have to bring your teams out. You need to bring IT and business together. You spend a day or 2 days thinking about what your value cases are and create small wins with high value cases. Understand who you're serving, who your customers are, internal customers are. Understand who your external customers are. Understand what the usage would be of that application. Is it going to be a high usage or not? So evaluate when you get started and ask the right questions. It's not about the answers. It's about getting in the habit of asking good questions. Everything I'm sharing with you, the question is, can you now communicate that simply with the business users and the community where you are going to be working with? So start with your low-hanging and high-value projects. You know that you can have instant results. Think about where can you actually start a project where that's a quick value, you've got the data is clean, and there is a high value. So think about the projects which can give you a quick return, because success breeds success. So you need to start creating success to get to the point where the value has been monetized. Value has been calculated. You can now start thinking about, it's a change of mindset. You're like, why should I live in the world of analytics, why should I worry about ROI? So the mindset has to change. You have to start saying, every project I'm going to do, I need to see how it's impacting the business. It will be hard in the beginning. It's not going to be easy, but you need to have the habit of talking to the business user to start quantifying what you're building is going to have an impact. So success program, I spoke about that briefly. Create a success program within your organization. Bring your teams outside the work environment, spend a day or 2 with them. Do a quarterly check-in. Think about what success looks like for your business. Measure your success. Get in the habit of measuring what the data is providing. There was a Gartner study, they said businesses are getting evaluated in general by the revenue and the money they make, their P&L, their income statement, their balance sheet. But the data is becoming a new commodity, a new asset for organization. So data is going to become a critical aspect of how the companies are going to be evaluated. Data is now getting proposed to be on the income statement or balance sheet. What kind of data you have? So really, we are moving from the world of IT we lived in with the CIOs, which was a cost center, to really a value center. And we all have that power of changing our mindset today from here and then going out becoming the advocate of change. We have to start thinking about, can we actually create that transparency, visibility? That's a big thing. I don't know what the data I have. Create the visibility and transparency in your organization. Make sure you're aligned. Alignment is a big piece. That's a challenge I see in every organization, is the alignment. So start by creating a program which actually creates success. And define your quality measures. Make sure you know that upfront what your quality measures are, so that you know when you're doing a rework or change, what does that really mean to you? So takeaway really is about the 7 elements. It's an easy way of communicating with your business or your internal or external folks about what the framework really is about. So think about the framework as a communication tool, evaluating where you are. When you're producing a high value ROI, monetizing of the data, think about communicating the 7 elements to the community to figure out whether you can provide that high value or not, and create success program. Those are the 2 things I want you to take away today, is really understanding, using the 7 elements as a framework to communicate. Take that as a baseline. That's really your foundation to start. And then the second thing is create success program. You need to have regular check-ins to make sure you're on the right track. Have a quarterly cadence. Make sure you're meeting every quarter with your team internally and externally, and defining what the success looks like. Make sure you're aligned with the objectives and the education, the data literacy is going on. And that's my information. I'm open to any question if we have time, Fern. If not, then I'll be around during lunchtime if you have any questions.
We have time for, I think, one question, maybe.
Thank you for the presentation. This was super helpful to hear. I actually work for a company. It's a small tech company, only 125 employees, about 5 in analytics, and we wear the IT hat as well. I was curious, between you or Fern, one of the pieces of research that I'd love to see is, in order to extract all of this value that you're talking about, there's a level of investment of both people, resources, and systems. And it eludes me, as we grow, and we're probably going to be doubling in size in the next 18 months, there's a continual push that I'm making for my team to make sure as the company grows, we do as well. And I wondered if you guys had come across any research that looks at, both from an employee standpoint as well as a dollar investment, what percentage of expenses, as you look at functional departments, does analytics play?
So I can take that first, and then you can add if you want. It's a great question. Very tactical question is, how much you should spend. The formula is different for different organizations. Depend entirely upon, if you're technology driven, if you're Uber, your spend would be completely different than if you were a pharmaceutical company. Right? So depends upon what your charter is and what your foundation is of your organization. It depends upon multiple factors. What your product to market strategy is, what your market looks like, what your consumer looks like, and how much are you using data as a core today, and where do you want to be tomorrow? So there are tons of questions there, so there's no simple answer I have seen. There's no one formula which works for everybody, but there are different metrics. What I would say is that create small success will help you identify how much your company will invest in your in analytics. So think about what are the high value proposition. You can start with no money with the data you have and start building predictive models and see what works. So take something small, start testing that, and see if you can start creating value for the organization.
Yeah, are you a TDWI member? Okay, so if you're a TDWI member, we do certain research. We do a salary survey. Another piece of research is a BI, what we call the team's benchmark. And in that survey, which I don't do, but we have the data, in a general way, we do have, the information, because we ask, all of those questions, how many full-time equivalents do you have on this? What on that? How much are you spending on this? So in a general way, because I agree with what Asha is saying, we have some of that data. So, I'd be happy to share it with you even if you're not a member. So send me an email and we can, because I know you want to use it to make your case. So.
Well, the challenge is a lot of people, it seems like in this room, come from enterprise companies. So I want to know, as we look at the maturity model of analytics, how does it progress?
Yeah. The more value you give using data, the more money funding you're going to get. So that's like the thumb rule. Yeah.
Sure. Asha will be around at the break. We're going to take a break. Then we're going to come back and we're going to hear from SPS Commerce about scaling with the cloud. And we're going to hear from Disney about their analytics transformation. So 2 good case studies right after the break.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.